Mohammed El-Kurd said, I've told you this on the phone, in person, and I will reiterate it publicly. What you think of the phrase globalize the intifada, our beautiful uprising against occupation, is irrelevant. What matters is that it's a slogan adopted by a movement that is partly responsible for your success, and you mustn't throw them under the bus. We are facing unprecedented levels of state repression and institutional censorship. Both our political organizing and speech are criminalized, and we are confronting genocide for God's sake. That you choose to continue elevating Jewish feelings over the lives of Palestinians over the fact of genocide is nothing more than punching down on those who have helped elevate you. And not to mention, it is bad electoral strategy considering you are quite literally winning and need not to bow down to Zionist pressure 100%. Like I'm endorsing Mohammed's take here 100%. He's right. The tens of thousands of volunteers who have canvassed for you in the scorching hot sun, they are not to be taken for granted. Their support isn't unconditional. Remember that. If I could vote, I would vote for Mamdani solely because of his economic agenda, as I care about the poor and working class New Yorkers. No other reason. I have no doubt that those anti-Palestinian dog whistles will only grow louder if not challenged. I sincerely hope I am wrong. I don't see this as like a major betrayal to the Palestinian cause or anything like that. I don't think he's like backing away, especially because he has spent so many years so visibly doing activism for Palestinians and for Palestine. And when you do that, especially at a time when there were far more severe consequences for it. Like being pro-Palestine wasn't like a popular position until recently. Even though it was always the correct position, it was an unimaginably unpopular position, okay? There's an entire wing of progressives in this country that are progressive except for Palestine. And not even just in this country, but in general, in the Western world. There are people who have been incredibly progressive overall, with the exception of Israel. This is something that I know from all of my years of advocacy, and this is something that Zohran Mamdani knows as well. So, especially when he's winning on this issue, the fact that he would like ever back away from that and give any inch because he personally thinks this is going to improve his broad appeal is just wrong. And the instincts that he had of unconditionally supporting Palestinian emancipation was right. It showed earnesty. So this looks like kind of fake. I'll still support him regardless, and I'll still tell my audience to go and vote for him regardless, even if he were to say like, oh, fuck Hasan, I don't know him, I disavow him. And I'm sure he knows that already. But the thing that I worry about is that it shows me that it's like a bad instinct in general. It looks personal, because I'm now in the crosshairs of Andrew Cuomo. But I said this yesterday as well before this thing happened. And my assessment is still the same, which is I don't think he's like betraying what he believes, right? I don't think he's betraying what he believes at all. But it does feel as though he is miscalculating if he thinks that this kind of line of attack is actually a successful one that actually tarnishes his broad appeal. Okay. Also, Bernie AOC influence is stupid because Bernie's own team reached out when Bernie and Zohran were doing the Brooklyn thing, and they wanted me to come out. So the notion that like, this is the Bernie AOC wing of the party, they still associate with me publicly. What the f- are we talking about? Calm down. They understand that I seemingly have some kind of appeal in the left flank of the party that they also think is important enough to talk to. Anyway, Zana says, if you're wondering why they're still asking about this months later, it's in part because every time he's asked this, his position becomes more palatable for the Democratic Party leadership and donors. They will continue asking this question until he's completely acquiesced into a boilerplate progressive Dem a la AOC. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think it's actually more nefarious than that. I think the reason why they're asking them this question is so that they can actually cook him and make him look inconsistent and hit him harder. Because the moment that you actually acquiesce, the moment that you actually concede on this ridiculous notion, this notion that is not truthful at all, because his original statement was like, it's an Arabic word. It's one that literally the Holocaust Memorial Foundation like uses when talking about the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. It's just the Arabic word for uprising. That was correct. That was the correct statement initially. And he has backed away from that, saying like, oh man, I don't know. I just don't know. It's very hurtful. It reminds people of bus bombings, like as though saying globalize the intifada means like you're going to do, Muslims are going to do bus bombings in New York City. Like that's bullshit. That is a racist fantasy, and you do not have to concede on that at all. Okay, you don't have to concede on that at all. And why must you not concede on that? Not because you want to be like a moral beacon. Okay, that's not even what I'm saying. The cynical, calculated assessment here. Okay, the cynical, calculated assessment here is that once you concede on that, they're just going to ask. They're going to use that as an opportunity to legitimize their line of attack. See, he recognizes it too. So we weren't wrong. We were right. That intifada is a violent language. And at a time when there's unprecedented amounts of attack on free speech, specifically from the perspective of being anti-Israel, anti-genocide, anti-Zionist, conceding on this after your lack of concessions on this issue allowed you to win this incredibly crowded primary against a dynastic figure like Andrew Cuomo and many other even progressive figures that were fighting alongside you to win the Democratic Party's primary is bad. It's never going to stop at this. Once you give a inch, they're going to take a mile. This is not the first time he has said this thing. I know he had basically unveiled that this was going to be his like soft concession to this standard. And I don't think it works. I don't think this is that big of a problem either way. It only becomes a big problem if this is all he is constantly seeking to address. Okay? Any moment that you find yourself offering legitimacy to this angle of attack is a moment that you're failing, because it's a moment that you're not talking about your policies. It's not a moment where you're talking about, it's a moment where you're not talking about like why people trust you, why people find you to be earnest. Okay? That's it. Didn't you address and predict this in your interview with him? I mean, I might have brought this up at some point, but I don't remember. I don't recall. Maybe. Zohran, who says he'll arrest Netanyahu, is 3 times more trusted by New Yorkers on Israel, Palestine than Cuomo, who has volunteered to defend Netanyahu. New York City's message to Israel lobby is loud and clear. We are not stupid, and you have no more influence here. Exactly. It's just a weakness. And you can never show weakness, especially when you're winning. It just makes no sense. I think it would be more damaging for him to concede on, do you disavow Hasan Piker? Do you disavow, globalize the intifada? All this shit. That shows more weakness and becomes a point of contention for him than not addressing it at all and just moving on and being like, these are silly distractions. Let's talk about the issues that really matter. Do you see? Do you understand what I'm saying here? Like, these are making it seem like I did 9/11. It is a horrifyingly racist statement on its face. It's an insanely Islamophobic shit. It's an insanely Islamophobic thing to do. I'm Muslim. He's Muslim. They're saying 9/11. Remember 9/11? Remember 9/11? It's basically what Charlie Kirk was doing, but a little bit different, like a little bit more palatable, right? I think people need to cut him some slack because this guy's running for mayor, not president or governor. No, I'm cutting him all the slack in the world. I don't think you guys understand. This doesn't change my opinion. But the only thing that I'm worried about, and this is far before the Andrew Cuomo stuff too, the only thing that I'm worried about is like it just shows bad instinct if you concede on stuff like this. I don't think he's like betraying the Palestinian cause or anything, or like used it as a way to farm clout or anything like that. In some respects, this in and of itself is no different than if he had conceded on the Israel question. Would you travel to Israel? Why won't you travel to Israel? Do you believe that Israel has a right to exist? Over and over again. What did he do in that situation? He said Israel has a right to exist as a democratic state that has equal rights and equal representation for all, which is not what Israel is. Okay? He perfectly took a framework that is so acceptable for liberals and recalculated and answered it in that way. But that, instead of conceding and instead of like owning and legitimizing this like cynical line of attack, he just said no. He stood proudly on this issue. If he were to lean into this line of attack, it just once again shows bad instincts, and it could become a problem for him in this race. Because he's gonna keep getting gummed up in the works. They're just gonna keep hitting him over and over again. This is what was brought up in the mayoral town hall. From a Zionist group that asked him about this already, because this is like something that the ADL has been trying to farm off of Zohran over and over again.
In the last 24 hours, that social media comments, activist slogans actually can lead to what happened last night in Washington, D.C. We've reported at Jewish Insider that you've gone on the show of a popular podcaster on the left named Hasan Piker, who has justified Hamas's October 7th, 2023 terror attacks. said it didn't matter if it occurred on October 7th on his show on a number of occasions. You've been on his show. Do you regret going on that show? And especially in the light of last night's murder of the Israeli embassy staff, is that type of rhetoric responsible in our public discourse?
I think that one of the lessons I learned from the Democratic Party's failures in this previous election is an inability to use every single platform and avenue to communicate with as many people as possible.
Yeah, the framing is also crazy racist, making it seem like I'm responsible for the DC shooting once again. Like, this is double for someone like Zohran, because he's not a white boy either, you know? I mean, they're lying about my takes. That's fine. They always do. What are you going to do? Who cares, right? But this also, like any attack in this vein that is directed in my direction can absolutely be implemented against Zohran in the exact same way because of our similar backgrounds. That's it. So it's a even more unique position for someone like him because, once again, he's brown, he's Muslim, he's even more visibly Muslim than I am, right? And he's a socialist. And also, he has spent a very long time doing very visible pro-Palestinian advocacy. So any kind of line of attack that bastardizes my assessment, my commentary, my analysis can very easily be directed at him as well. So he's in a really unique position here, in a really unique predicament where saying like, oh, this guy is bad and wrong, they can just as easily turn around and say, okay, well, here's something you've said. Here's a group that you've started, Students for Justice for Palestine and Bowdoin College. Like, and this is the exact line of attack that won't really actually harm his chances, as it didn't in the primary. It's not going to in the general either, unless this is the only thing that he is constantly tasked with responding. Stop giving them ideas. No, I'm not. I'm not giving them ideas. I'm telling them exactly how this works because I saw it happen with Corbyn. Okay, that's it.
Desire to only speak to journalists and podcast hosts with whom you have agreement on every single issue. And I think that much of that conversation pertained to discussions around whether or not people should appear on Joe Rogan. But I think it is part of a broader conversation around politics as a manner of purity, when I think politics should also be an avenue to engage as many people as possible. And so to me, I do not have regrets of speaking to any interviewer, to any journalist, to any podcaster, because ultimately...
Yeah, Corbyn conceded early that there was anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and it was all that he was asked about for 5 years. He was cooked, which is ironic because the Tories on the other side, for those 5 years, were doing unimaginably anti-Semitic shit, like almost directly aligning with the EDL, like all these other groups. They put a statue of Nancy Astor up to celebrate her. She literally said Hitler was right about the Jews. Like, a person who said that was venerated, was celebrated by the Tory government at the time when everybody was like, Jeremy Corbyn's a real anti-Semite. Like, there is no, we've seen this already. We've fucking seen how this works. And like taking on the oppositional framing in this situation and conceding to their framing unironically makes this a larger issue for progressives, for the left, for Democrats as well. This is the same exact technique that right-wing groups apply with regular frequency. They're doing this. This is a right-wing group, it's a Zionist group, and they're doing this as Zohran right here. And he, dances around it and does a decent job. I don't expect him to just be like, Hasan is my favorite content creator. I love him. I am defending him unconditionally. That's not my expectation at all, right? And it's not even about loyalty or anything like that. I don't give a shit. Like I said, put the policy in the bag, okay? Put the policy in the bag, little bro. That's all I care about. You're a politician, okay? You're an elected. I want you to be a good mayor. I want you to actually help the people of New York. I want you to help the working class of New York. I want you to make things more affordable. I want you to have a more robust public transit. That's what I care about, okay?
My message is consistent in all of those mediums. And it's a message that I want to have reach as many people as possible while making clear what my values are and my statements are.
Given that comment, do you have a responsibility then when you go on a show like that to say, Hasan, your comments about Hamas, your comments about October 7th are unacceptable. I reject them. And If so, why haven't you said that to his face and on his show?
I think that my words speak for themselves. In the context of that, I think about 3.5-hour interview, I made very clear where I stood. And I think this is something that I have sought to embody throughout my career as a consistency. And I think that my actions, my words, even in that interview, spoke for themselves.
But this was in the primary. Those questions are ridiculous anyway. If you recall, the Zionist advocacy groups have one speed. They try to do this in France as well to Mélenchon's party. Okay? They try to do this in France and Mélenchon's party. And their response was so clear. It was the best possible response I've ever heard from any politician. Okay? Zohran, I'm pivoted here. In France, the dude straight up said, you guys literally say everyone's a anti-Semite if they are anti-genocide. Are you anti-genocide? He redirected it back. He said, there's a genocide going on. Are you anti-genocide? Why do you never ask people if they're anti-genocide or not? You say this to anyone that has ever said anything mean about Israel. Okay? That's the perfect response. You say this to everybody. And the reason why that's a perfect response is because not only is it true, okay? Not only is it true, but also a lot of other people, if you're running in a popularity contest, like a election, you want to say shit that's going to come across as popular, okay? And virtually everyone, regardless of their position, unless they're like super duper pro-Israel, and they're never going to vote for Zohran anyway if they are super duper pro-Israel, has felt this. They've seen this. Even if they themselves are not visible public figures, they have seen, they've sensed the attitude coming from mainstream outlets, coming from institutions where it's like, don't say anything about Israel. Don't say it. You see the dead children? Don't say a goddamn thing, or else we'll say you're anti-Semitic. We'll ruin your life. And that has gotten so out of hand that the average person is aware of this attitude. Okay?
Always helpful to hear feedback as to what I have said, how I've engaged, and to always understand what it could look like in the future.
Has what happened?
Would you consider being a campaign manager? Someone asked. No, dude. Why the would I do that? I give it out for free. Okay? Nothing in my advocacy is paywalled. It's free. Okay? That's why the Piker Broadcasting Service is sponsored by you, the viewers, for you, the viewers. There's no ads, and you know, it's free ball. There is no reason for me to, in any way, shape, or form, paywall my takes. Why does your advice not penetrate to people like him and AOC when it comes to this sort of thing? Because the more you are surrounded by people in DC, or the more you're surrounded by establishment Democrats, I feel as though the more you hear from them as opposed to people like myself. Because like Zohran, when he was running, hey, open presence, thank you for the 25, get the subs. When Zohran was running, he was surrounded by activists, advocates. His entire team is people who have a similar mindset to someone like myself. But now that he is like more tapped in with the Democratic establishment, because he's like trying to become, I mean, he wants the endorsements from all the Democrats, and he wants to win the mayoral race. He has more feedback, less feedback from people like myself, and more feedback from people in DC. And their attitude is a lot more careful. Their attitude is a lot more calculated. But the thing is, Zohran Mamdani's earnesty on this issue, on an unimaginably popular issue in the base, is what allowed him to cut away from the rest of the politicians on that crowded field in the primary. But I think that's where this comes from. Mélenchon's answer on the Dig podcast on being smeared as anti-Semitic as a way to delegitimize Muslims and Palestine solidarity. Here's what Mélenchon said. Jean-Luc Mélenchon said, at the same time, all these attacks are an opportunity for mass popular education, provided we never back down. That is to say, once the battle is engaged, we do not give in. We do not back down. We do not apologize. We do not admit any mistakes, and we put up a fight. Those who don't like you won't like you anymore in the end. They may even hate you more, but those who didn't know you will understand that there is a problem. And those who are with you will gain confidence. They will say to themselves, they're not giving up. They're not going to betray me along the way. They're not abandoning their ideas along the way. For us on the left, regaining the trust of the people is the number one test. This is precisely precisely my point. This was unfortunately a major failure for Jeremy Corbyn, who I love deeply. Okay. I think he's a fantastic person. But unfortunately, as a politician, he was too kind. He was too soft. And you can't be. You got to be a fighter. You cannot fold. Never engage on a faulty framework. Even if you concede on a minor point, they'll just pounce on you anyways. Exactly. How many times have we seen this?